Welcome to True Echo, the channel where real voices rise, truth cuts deep, and power speaks not with noise, but with action. Today's story is about what happens when a successful black CEO is pulled from a flight looking suspicious, and instead of staying silent, she pulls $4 billion out of the airline's pocket. This isn't just about race, or business, or revenge. It's about dignity. It's about what you do when you're judged before you're heard. And it all starts with a seat 2A. You ever have one of those mornings where everything just works? The sky's clear, your coffee hits right, and even airport security is smooth. That's how it started for Dr. Monique Ellison. It was 6:43 a.m. in Salt Lake City International Airport's Terminal A, and Monique rolled her slim black carry-on past the early travelers with a calm purpose. Her navy pantsuit was pressed to perfection, her heels were low but commanding, and her tablet buzzed with a final checklist for the most important meeting of her career. In a few hours, she'd be in Geneva to close a $4 billion deal with a global airline consortium, a deal her company, Viridian Systems, had been building for 2 years. Monique had built everything from the ground up. No handouts, no shortcuts. From night school coding sessions at a community college in Detroit to Stanford, then tech startup hell, then global success. Her company, once running out of a co-working space, now stood as a leader in AI-driven aviation logistics. And this meeting in Switzerland would secure Viridian's role in modernizing one of the world's largest airlines. She reached her gate early, always did. A smooth jazz track played softly overhead as a flight attendant at the counter prepped for boarding. Outside the tall windows, dawn smeared golden over the parked aircraft. The world was calm. And for a moment, so was she. Until the two men approached. Security. One heavy-set with a deep frown and resting sweat sheen, the other wiry, stiff, and wearing mirrored sunglasses, inside. "Excuse me, ma'am," the older one said, his voice clipped. Monique removed one earbud. "Yes. We need to speak with you. Step over here, please." She blinked. "What's this about?" "Won't take long. No names. No explanation. Just authority, the kind that assumed obedience." She glanced down at her boarding pass, Dr. Monique Ellison. Seat 2A. Flight 517 to Geneva. She looked back up and said calmly, "I'm the CEO of Viridian Systems. I'm traveling for a meeting overseas. I'm on your airline's partnership board. This must be a mistake." The older guard didn't blink. "Just a few questions, ma'am." People were watching now, a teenage boy in sweats, an elderly couple with a magazine open, even one of the flight crew. Their eyes weren't hostile. Just curious. Or maybe just complicit. Monique knew better than to argue in a terminal. So she followed. Quietly. Not because she trusted them, but because she knew what refusing might cost. The hallway they led her into didn't feel like part of the airport. It was narrow, dim, and sterile, like some forgotten corridor in an abandoned office. A low hum from fluorescent bulbs above buzzed irregularly, and the air smelled faintly of industrial cleaner and old paper. Monique stopped. "Before we go any farther, I want to know, am I being detained?" The younger guard leaned against the wall, arms crossed, mouth set in a bored line. The older one cleared his throat and answered, "We received a report about a passenger acting suspiciously. Matched your description. Just doing our job, ma'am." "Suspicious how?" she asked. "What exactly was I doing?" "No details in the report. Just said a female passenger matching your description was acting erratic." She stared at him. "So, let me get this straight, based on an anonymous tip with no specifics, you pulled a black woman out of a first-class boarding line before an international flight, without evidence, without a cause, and without an apology." The guards exchanged glances. The older one looked slightly uncomfortable. The younger one remained motionless. She took a breath and pulled out her phone. "Then I'll be texting my attorney. Ma'am, please don't use your phone. I'm not asking, she snapped, her voice calm but hard. You've already made it clear I don't have rights here, but I'll exercise the ones I still do. They said nothing as she typed. 15 minutes passed in that lifeless hallway. They asked questions she'd already answered. Where are you flying? What's your purpose? Do you have any checked luggage? Over and over, like they were trying to trip her up. I told you, she said through clenched teeth. Geneva. Business meeting. CEO of Viridian Systems. No checked bags. You're delaying a multi-billion-dollar contract for no reason. The younger man scribbled in a notebook, refusing to meet her eyes. The older guard finally muttered, could be a false alarm. Then let me go, she said. Now. By the time they walked her back to the gate, her worst fear was confirmed. The sign above had changed. Final boarding. Gate closed. Flight 517 had departed. Monique stood at the glass and watched as the aircraft pulled away from the jet bridge, its tail rising slowly above the tarmac, glinting in the morning light. That was her plane. Her deal. Her moment. Gone. She turned to the guards. I want a written explanation. Names. Yours, his, and the person who filed the report. Confidential, the younger one said, finally meeting her eyes, if only for a second. Of course, she said bitterly. Confidential racism. I forgot that's a feature, not a bug. You're free to rebook, the older one offered. The airline might cover part of it. She stared at him. Cold. Controlled. I don't want reimbursement. I want accountability. No answer. She picked up her carry-on, turned without another word, and walked out of the gate. The terminal felt 10 degrees colder. Nobody stopped her. Nobody said a word. But they all watched. What no one realized, not the passengers, not the guards, not the airline itself, was that Dr. Monique Ellison wasn't just another executive. She was the one who had orchestrated the $4 billion partnership this airline had staked its future on. And now, she was reconsidering everything. Monique didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch as she walked through the terminal and sat down at a quiet corner cafe just past security. She ordered a black coffee she wouldn't touch and stared blankly at the wall as boarding announcements echoed behind her. Her phone buzzed. Taylor. She answered. Hey. Dr. Ellison. Did you land early or? I didn't get on the flight. A pause. Wait, what? Security pulled me. Said someone reported me as suspicious. Never told me who. Never explained what I supposedly did. Questioned me until the flight was gone. There was silence on the other end. Then Taylor whispered, Are you okay? I'm fine, Monique said, though her shoulders were tight and her voice felt like gravel in her throat. I just need a moment. And I need to make a decision. Do you want me to alert the Geneva team? Delay the signing? Not yet. After the call ended, Monique stared at the untouched coffee, her reflection rippling in the surface. Her thoughts swirled like a hurricane. Not just about her missed flight, but about all the small moments leading up to it. The quiet stares. The judgmental glances. The guards who didn't ask if she needed water. The way they assumed a black woman in a first-class seat was more likely a threat than a professional. She took out her iPad, not for emails, but to open the Viridian internal portal. She tapped on a folder labeled Project Atlas. Project Atlas was the name of the deal. The biggest in Viridian's history. Cloud infrastructure. AI-driven analytics. A 10-year agreement. $4 billion. Months of strategy, compliance reviews, red lines, audits, all led by her. She looked at the numbers. She looked at the airline's logo, embedded in the contract header. And then she closed the tablet. Her phone buzzed again. A call, this time. Unknown number. She let it ring once, twice, but then curiosity won. She answered. This is Monique. Dr. Ellison, this is Alan Rusk. I'm a director at Northern Air. I was informed there was an incident this morning. I wanted to personally assure you that we are taking this matter seriously. Monique said nothing. Our initial report states the situation arose from a passenger tip. Standard protocol followed. No profiling was intended. A precaution, she said flatly. Yes. And we do regret the inconvenience. Her voice sharpened. A pause. Yes. I was detained. Interrogated. Humiliated. Missed a multi-billion-dollar meeting. And you call that an inconvenience? Alan stumbled. We're committed to making this right. If there's anything we can do. There is, she said. Be ready for a formal notice from Viridian Systems. He sounded surprised. Excuse me. She was already standing up. Next time your security treats a black woman like a threat, you better make damn sure you know who she is first. She ended the call. No rage. No drama. Just power. And that was the beginning of the end, not just for the deal, but for the illusion that this kind of profiling could go unpunished. Monique stepped out into the morning light with her carry-on in one hand and her phone in the other. She wasn't headed to Geneva anymore. She was going home. But not to rest. To get ready. Because silence was no longer an option. By the time Monique stepped into her Scottsdale condo, the Arizona sun had dipped low behind the hills, casting long golden streaks across her marble floors. She didn't flick on any lights. The soft silence of home wrapped around her like armor. She slid off her heels, dropped her carry-on by the door, and walked barefoot into the kitchen. The cool tile grounded her. Her phone buzzed again, this time a message from Taylor. Let me know if you want me to draft anything for the exec team. Or just talk. I'm here. Then another ping. This time, it was from Leandra Cho, Viridian's general counsel. I heard. I'm furious. Whatever you want to do, I'm backing you. Say the word. Monique stared at the screen. Her jaw clenched. Her heart was still running hot, but beneath the anger, something else had started to form, purpose. She opened her fridge, poured herself a glass of water, and stood at the counter in the dark, replaying every second of what happened. The smirking guard. The silence from bystanders. The plane pulling away. She could do what every corporate executive was expected to do, stay quiet, absorb the hit, protect the deal. But that wasn't who she was. Not anymore. She opened her iPad again, this time to draft a message. She texted Leandra. Can we call an emergency board session before Monday? I want everything documented. Every interaction. Every name. Every call. She hit send. Then she walked into her home office, turned on the light, sat down at her desk, and opened her laptop. A new document. Blank. Waiting. She titled it, Northern Air Incident, Personal Statement by Dr. Monique Ellison. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a long moment. Then she began to type. I'm not writing this as a CEO. I'm writing this as a black woman who spent her life building something no one ever handed her. And as she wrote, the weight in her chest began to lift. Not because it healed the wound. But because speaking the truth, her truth, made the shame fall where it belonged, on them. This wasn't just a personal violation. This was systemic. Predictable. And now, she had the power to do something no one else had been able to do. Turn a private humiliation into a corporate reckoning. Monday, 9:02 a.m. Viridian Systems Headquarters. East Conference Room, 3rd floor. The room was quiet, sleek, modern. Frosted glass. Matte black panels. 12 board members sat around the long table, some remote on screens, others in person. But all of them were alert. Monique stood at the head of the table. No script. No notes. Just the steel in her spine and the fire in her voice. "I was pulled from my flight Friday morning," she began. "No charges. No reason. Just a tip about a suspicious passenger, me. A black woman in a first-class seat." The murmurs were immediate. "They questioned me for 45 minutes, she continued. "I cooperated. Answered everything. Still missed the flight. Still lost the deal signing." Jerome Park, a seasoned board member with silver hair and skeptical eyes, raised a hand. "Did the airline offer any restitution?" "A weak apology. No names. No accountability." He leaned back. "So what are you proposing?" She met his eyes. "We terminate the deal. Pull Viridian out of Project Atlas." Gasps. Shifting chairs. Someone whispered, "That's $4 billion. "I know exactly what it is," Monique said. "I built this company. I fought for $50,000 contracts when no one knew our name. But what message do we send our employees, our partners, if we stay silent? If we reward this behavior with a handshake?" Silence fell like a curtain. Then Julia Lin, head of international strategy, spoke up. "You're not just asking us to cut a contract," she said. "You're asking us to take a stand." "Yes," Monique said. "I am. Because if we don't, then what do we actually stand for?" Jerome folded his hands. "I've never seen you come in here like this. Not once in 8 years. Because I've never been this sure before." A long pause. Then Jerome nodded. "I vote yes." "Julia, yes." One by one, the board followed. 12 out of 12. The partnership with Northern Air, dead. No applause. Just gravity. As the room emptied, Leandra came up beside her. "You just turned a private insult into a public earthquake." Monique glanced over her shoulder. "Good. But the world hadn't heard the story yet. And once they did, the storm would really begin." It took less than 36 hours for the story to explode. Viridian Systems issued an official press release, drafted carefully by legal but sharpened by Monique's own words. The headline was bold, deliberate. Viridian Systems terminates $4 billion partnership with Northern Air parent company following CEO's discriminatory detainment. Within minutes, it was trending. By noon, Forbes had picked it up. CNBC followed. Then TechCrunch. The story wasn't buried in the business section, it was front-page digital news, with headlines that did not pull punches. And then someone, no one quite knew who, leaked the internal memo Monique had written for the board. "I was pulled aside not because of a threat, but because of a perception, that a black woman in a tailored suit, flying first class, couldn't possibly be a CEO. If my presence makes people uncomfortable, then let them stay uncomfortable." That line ignited social media like dry brush meeting fire. Hashtag pulled while black. Hashtag Monique Ellison. Hashtag Seat 2A. Those hashtags trended globally for 2 days straight. Twitter became a digital war zone, part inspiration, part backlash. Half the country praised Monique's bravery. The other half accused her of overreacting. "You should have taken the apology. She cost her company $4 billion for a woke tantrum. She's the kind of leader we need." People didn't just have opinions, they had stories. Black tech workers from Seattle to Atlanta shared their experiences. TSA agents sliding their hands into their afros. Being randomly searched 3 times on the same flight path. White colleagues being waved through with a nod while they were grilled at the gate. One anonymous post read, I've flown over 60 times for work. I've been in first class maybe 10. Every single time, someone has looked at me like I don't belong. Once, a flight attendant asked if I was in the wrong seat before I could even buckle in. Monique didn't tweet. She didn't go on cable news. She didn't need to. Her silence became its own kind of power. Northern Air's PR team tried to clean it up. They issued another statement, longer this time. It was corporate, bloated, and filled with meaningless phrases like inclusive training review and unconscious bias remediation. But they never said Monique's name. Never admitted fault. And it was too late. Northern Air's stock dropped 6% within 24 hours. Then another 3%. Shareholders panicked. Their board scrambled for answers. Meanwhile, Viridian Systems didn't collapse, it soared. Investors rallied around the decision. One high-profile stakeholder told the Wall Street Journal. Dr. Ellison showed the kind of leadership most executives only pretend to have. She didn't play it safe. She made the right call. That's exactly why we're investing more in Viridian. Back at the Scottsdale office, things were quiet, but different. Employees walked taller. Engineers who never spoke in meetings began voicing bold ideas. Department heads discussed bias training not as a checkbox, but as a foundation. Monique returned to her normal schedule, attending strategy meetings, reviewing prototypes, mentoring new hires. But everything felt sharper. More alive. One afternoon in the break room, a junior UX designer named Celia stopped her near the coffee machine. Dr. Ellison, she said nervously. Can I just say, thank you? Monique turned, surprised. I've never seen someone in your position actually do something about it, Celia added. You didn't just post a hashtag. You did something real. Monique smiled faintly. That's the difference between having a seat at the table and owning the damn table. Celia blinked. Then grinned and walked away. Monique poured her coffee, black, no sugar, and stared out the window. The storm hadn't passed. But for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like she was just surviving it. She had caused it. But the world still hadn't heard her voice. Not completely. And that moment was coming. Soon. The interview wasn't scheduled. It wasn't filtered through a PR team or orchestrated for optics. It began with a handwritten note. Samira Hall, a mid-30s journalist from a small but rising independent news channel in Phoenix, had dropped it off at Viridian HQ herself. The note wasn't dramatic, it was respectful. Honest. I don't want a headline. I want the truth, if you're ready to share it. Monique read it 3 times. Most of the interview requests that had come pouring in over the last 2 weeks were from legacy networks and media giants. They wanted outrage, sound bites, conflict. They wanted her to either double down or apologize. But Samira? She just wanted a conversation. Monique agreed. They met on the rooftop lounge of Viridian's headquarters, just before sunset. The sky behind them was painted in streaks of soft orange and lavender. The setup was simple, 2 chairs, 1 camera, no teleprompter. Samira leaned forward slightly, voice steady. Why now? Why make this public? Monique exhaled slowly. Because if I didn't speak up, nothing would change. I've spent 20 years in tech, in boardrooms where I was the only black woman, in meetings where my name was mispronounced or confused with someone junior. I played the game. I built the empire. And none of that mattered the moment someone decided I looked suspicious. Samira nodded. Some people say this could have been handled quietly. A dry smile tugged at the edge of Monique's mouth. Of course they do. Quiet doesn't challenge investors. Quiet protects deals. Quiet keeps the checks coming. But people like me, we don't have the luxury of quiet. And the partnership? It's over, Monique said. We pulled the contract. Do you think they'll change? I don't know. Maybe they'll hire a new PR firm, revise a policy, slap together a diversity day. But that's not the point. Samira tilted her head. Then what is the point? Monique looked directly into the camera. The point is, I shouldn't need to be wealthy, powerful, or highly educated to be treated with basic dignity. I should just need to be human. That should have been enough. A long silence followed. Samira didn't fill it. Then, do you regret walking away from $4 billion? Monique's eyes didn't waver. I regret missing the flight. I regret not being in that room when the ink dried. But the deal? No. I didn't build this company to excuse racism. $4 billion can't buy back your self-respect. Samira flipped to the last page in her notebook. One final question, she said. What would you say to the woman watching this right now, who's afraid to speak up? Who's afraid she'll lose everything if she tells the truth? Monique didn't hesitate. I'd tell her, you were never meant to shrink so others could feel big. If the table shakes when you speak, maybe it was never built for you in the first place. Don't let anyone's discomfort become your silence. The camera clicked off. Samira extended her hand. No one's going to forget this. I hope not, Monique replied. She left the rooftop as dusk settled over the city, the air warm and calm, her heart steady. The noise would come again, headlines, trolls, defenders, deniers. But something had shifted. And she still had one more message to deliver. Not to reporters. Not to shareholders. But to the ones who needed it most. The headlines had slowed. The tweets lost momentum. The pundits moved on to the next scandal. But Monique wasn't finished. Late one evening, she sat alone in her home office, the same space where she had first typed the memo that started it all. Her desk was clean now, her inbox quiet for the first time in weeks. The storm outside had passed, but the storm inside her. It had settled into something deeper. Sharper. Resolve. She opened her laptop and began to write. Not a press release. Not a legal brief. Not a memo for the board. This time, it was personal. A message. Not for the media. Not for the company. Not even for Northern Air. But for anyone who had ever been mistaken for less. Anyone who had been followed in a store. Pulled from a line. Asked, "Can I help you?" in a tone that said, "You don't belong here." She clicked Publish on Viridian's official site. It was just one page. No logo. No hashtags. Just words. You don't need a billion-dollar contract to defend your dignity. You don't need a boardroom title to demand better. You don't need permission to be respected. If the rules change when you show up, maybe the rules were wrong. Stand firm anyway. And speak, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially then. Within minutes, the post began circulating. Employees across industries shared it. Teachers, artists, scientists, students. Black women in leadership positions posted screenshots with 3 words, "I needed this." And quietly, without PR teams or media buzz, Monique began to receive messages. One from a flight attendant. "I watched what happened to you. I'm in the system. I see how it works. I'm trying to change it from inside. Thank you for not letting it slide." One from a college student. "Your story made me switch my major to business. I want to build what you built, without pretending to be smaller." And one from a mother in Atlanta. "My daughter watched your interview and said, I want to be like her. She's 10. You gave her more than a dream. You gave her permission." Monique didn't respond to most of them. She didn't have to. The message had landed. She stood from her chair, walked across the room, and looked out over the Scottsdale skyline. The lights shimmered in silence. The world hadn't changed overnight, but it had shifted. And she had moved it. Not with anger. Not with vengeance. But with conviction. If you've ever been judged before being heard, this story is for you. If you've ever been told to stay quiet to keep the peace, let Monique Ellison remind you, peace built on silence isn't peace. It's control. Don't shrink. Don't wait. Tell your story. Stand your ground. And if they ever pull you off your path, walk back on it, stronger than before. At True Echo, we believe stories like Monique's are more than news, they're truth. They're the fire that sparks change. If her story moved you, or reminded you of your own, don't let it end here. Subscribe to True Echo for more real, raw, and righteous stories that echo the strength inside us all. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and tell us, what would you do if they tried to pull you out of your seat?